So let's get one thing out of the way. There's been a number of woke teachers saying, well, what are you going to do if an immigration officer shows up to the school and basically tells someone, the son of illegal, let's just say, sorry, but you got to go. How are you going to explain that to your children of, why one is no longer at school?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pulling on our heartstrings. I'm not really interested in that.
Stop.
But when it comes to a separate issue, so that's that's looking at the illegals perspective. Now we kind of pivot back from that turn and go to kind of what you've been saying, which is okay, but for someone who's not an illegal, whether they're Hispanic or black or white, whatever it is, should we have ICE officers or whatever, INS, not going door to door? And so before I, say what I want to say about it, I would like to hear your points on that, why you're not for that, everything you want to say.
Well, first off, I want to say that I'm not for birthright citizenship. Because it's actually not constitutional. And actually, when they were writing all that in there, they actually do state that. So they need to take a look back into that they aren't talking about people born there. It's, if you're from a foreign area and then you have a child here, there's an anchor baby doesn't exist in the sense of that child is not. Then if you are an illegal, your child is technically constitutionally considered an illegal too.
Right.
Now again,
it should be.
Right. Exactly. Correct. No, my thing with the immigration and how to deal with it though is, so I'm not for, and I'll restate myself again, is I'm not for going into people's houses and this, that, and the other. Unless, like for example, let's say it's, it's a coke house or whatever, like there are known drug usage or known, major illegal activities, gun selling, like as far as illegal gun selling, whatever you want to call it,
arms trafficking.
Yeah, arms. There we go. Arms
or
trafficking.
Human trafficking.
Yeah, or human trafficking. Drugs. Drug smuggling, things of the sort. Those things, yeah, sure, go into the house. But as far as like, there's a known illegal immigrant in there. I'm not personally okay with going into people's houses on that one. My idea is just have a no tolerance policy, which is like I've said before, is you so much as get a ticket, as far as a speeding ticket or run a red light, whatever, and you are found out to be illegal, see you later. That's my thing. And again, my reasoning behind this is because if you end up going into people's houses and this, that, and the other, you're going to have to implement at some point a mass federal force. And when we do those things, when we implement federal forces or anything of the sort, we don't abolish them and we don't get rid of them. And the next administration can use those. And I just don't trust the government. Yeah. So that's my concern as far as, the reasoning I don't want it, because yes, I'm playing off of, possibility of happening, but again, it's that I see both effective, obviously. And yeah, so that's why I say, hey, a no tolerance policy. And I'm talking again, any, crime, again, just a speeding ticket, boom, you're found out illegal, you're gone. Which is a lot easier than implementing a federal force, in my, opinion. That way, again, it can't be used later in life against, American citizens. So that's my, argument, or conservatives too.
Well, so I guess so the audience understands more specific. Well, let's do two scenarios here. So scenario number one, which you'd be good with. So, like you said, cop pulls over a car and they were speeding. He's running the plate and he's looking at the person and saying, something's not adding up. This is a stolen car, or you're not who you say you are. You're working under a false name, something like that. Or, well, you were on a visa, but that visa expired a year ago. Why are you still here? No problem. This is what you would say. No problem with saying, well, we're going to call INS and you're going to get deported.
Right. Because of the fact that you, one, already committed a crime.
Right.
Not saying that you're not committing a crime, by being here illegally. Obviously you are, but I'm just saying you've already committed a second crime at this point now. So Yeah, no, I'm 100% okay with that scenario.
And it could be anything from as mild as that to as extreme as, okay, we caught you doing armed robbery.
Yeah, 100%.
Whatever.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Second scenario, let's just say we'll go here. Someone knocks at the front door, you open it, and they're like, "Hey, we're looking for," and they name some name. Where is he? That would be a scenario where you were just not okay with.
Me personally, I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
Yes.
All
personally.
Right.
Yes.
So that sketches that out clearly. So let me also make sure I understand. So the idea is that if we do that, then that creates part of the government that can, in the future, it probably wouldn't be used now.
Yeah.
But it can in the future be used against us or against
anybody.
People. Anybody.
Right.
That doesn't deserve to have that in their lives.
Correct.
Just an innocent victim.
Correct. And we can say it's temporary, but again, I just talking about the Guantanamo Bay thing, I don't believe in anything that's temporary.
Right.
So yeah, that's some of the reason behind that. As far as I don't see it being temporary, and I don't see it getting abolished afterwards or anything of the sort. So yeah.
And I understand that my concern is kind of twofold. So we're looking at, okay, so you would have the potential of an abuse of liberty, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
With the creation of this, let's just call it a new federal agency.
Or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
That could potentially infringe on freedom. It could hurt our liberty.
Correct.
I would contend that allowing people who have come into the country illegally who haven't committed a crime, I want to specify, I know that when it comes to committing a crime, you and I are on the same page.
Yes, right, of course.
But in the sense of those who have come in illegally, but the point is that's the only crime they've committed, I would contend that that's actually a problem of liberty as well, because what you're doing is allowing people to be here that have broken the law. And is there a possibility that they're not going to break the law in the future? Yeah, there's a possibility.
Right.
But the issue that I have with that is the other stuff. So, for example, with flooding the job market of cheap labor, that's a problem. I mean, and that at least, okay, you've got positive liberty and negative liberty. Negative liberty has to do with being left alone. Positive liberty has to do with the ability to do something.
Right.
By allowing these people to stay, you are affecting Americans' positive liberty,
right?
Their ability to go make a living in some sense.
I
mean, it's not that they can't. It's harder because there's other people that are willing to work for way less because they're feeding their babies with beans and rice. I don't know how they're doing it. Probably getting government dole and working under a false name in some cases. So that's the other problem is, okay, if they're here illegally, are they going to work under their name or a false name? If they're working under a false name, that's identity theft,
right? Of course.
And so I think
if that gets discovered,
right? You would join me in saying, well, then they should be prosecuted for that. You and I would, agree.
Once discovered,
right. But in terms of if they don't, but they're working, I guess, under their name, or maybe their employer's not asking what their name is. I don't know. It depends on the situation, I suppose. You would say that it's okay for them to be here illegally as long as they're not making any future crimes. And that, to me, it sounds like a form of amnesty.
To an extent, yes. But with as strict as the no tolerance policy would be, it's not, to an extent. Because again, just like we said, so we're also kind of taking the, let's say COVID restrictions into play here, as far as like, tell on your neighbor, essentially, as far as like, for example, hey, this person's committing identity theft. You're hoping that the employer would then call people, hey, that there's this person committing identity theft. There you go. There's your reason for investigation, et cetera, et cetera. So you're also taking some of the things that they did implement with COVID into play, which actually were pretty effective in those states. So it's not to say that people won't tell on other people. So there is that. Also in the sense of, I guess, yes, you can look at it in a sense of amnesty. But a couple things on that. So as far as like the job thing, as far as cheap labor, no matter what you do, let's say you get rid of all the illegals, right?
Okay.
You're still going to find cheap labor. Companies are always going to try and find cheap labor no matter what they do.
So it doesn't matter?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
For example, let's take like Elon Musk, for example. Elon Musk has gone out and hired people from like India, because it's what? Cheap labor. So these big companies are still going to find cheap labor regardless of what they're doing. I'm not saying that, it's okay, or then makes it okay for these people to be here, this, that, and the other. No, that's not the argument I'm making. My only point is the job situation. It's not necessarily getting rid of them is not necessarily fixing it, because companies are still going to find a workaround as far as to find cheap labor. That's all I'm saying. In that side of things. So it's not at all saying this is okay, this, that, and the other. Also, with the no tolerance policy, at least on the one hand, yes, again, we can play this as a amnesty thing, I guess, sure. But at least on the one hand it's making the ones that are here illegally very, how should I say this, wary of, you still have to play by so many stinking rules. It's almost not even worth it to an extent. Or eventually at some point you're going to get found out anyway, because again, you're already committing something, because you apply for a job, you're going to have to commit some form of identity theft at some point in time. So that's kind of my point with the no tolerance policy. Is it's effective, in my opinion, it's effective enough without just going house to house. More effective than house to house, in my personal opinion.
So what's the difference between, because I'm trying to understand the distinction.
Yeah.
Between, for example, an employer calling the feds and saying, hey, this guy's under this name, but I don't think this is him, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
A question about identity theft. What's the difference between that and somebody calling in and saying, I think this person is here illegally for other reasons?
Right.
Because in that, the first
in
scenario,
terms of like a federal force, or like, what do you
either.
mean?
When I say the feds, I just mean it could be anyone. But because in the first scenario that I mentioned of, okay, there you have a possibility of identity theft, right?
Yeah.
But you would be for the investigation and or deportation
right.
of that. The second scenario where people have other reasons for thinking someone's here illegally, that would be more like what you're talking about, where it's not clear if they've committed another crime other than being here illegally.
Right,
I guess I'm asking the question, how come one crime should be prosecuted but not the other?
And it's not necessarily that one crime shouldn't be prosecuted. It's a sense of, I guess, how do you prosecute the other crime? It's the process in which you prosecute the first original crime, which is being here illegally. We both agree on that. So that's the biggest thing. And I guess the difference between, reporting and like the no tolerance and the federal is the agency, whatever we want to call it, federal force or whatever, is the sense of who's doing the investigating, right? I'm not for, we already have enough spying on us as is. Mm-hmm. I'm not for another federal agency opening up this huge database. Oh, this person, we got to discover this database of who's illegal, who's not, this, that, and the other. I'm not for that. Release of information and all that other stuff. I'm not for all that. Now, as far as, again, telling on your neighbor type thing, investigating a report, is different. If I call, and say, hey, I think my neighbor across the street is running a meth lab, they're going to investigate that. Why? Because they have reasonable suspicion, not because they pulled a database. I'm not for this, again, all this information release and just, being able to do even deeper dives into people's information than what we already have. That's also my thing on that. So the difference is a report system where you have more, you at least have something to go off versus just, now we have everybody's database here that we can pull at any moment in time and, discover any which thing, I guess. So yeah.
I would contend that you can use the same process you're talking about, which sounds like probable cause and getting a warrant as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
I would argue that you can apply that to being here illegally as well as other crimes. I don't understand I do, but I don't agree with the drawing of the line at more crimes besides coming in illegally.
Right.
I would draw the line at the entrance into the country illegally and say, well, you can still use probable cause, the Constitution, and not infringing on the liberties of regular Americans. You and I are not here illegally, right?
Right, of course.
And there's no probable cause to think that we were. Well, as other people, there would be. And so I still think you can use the legal system for that crime without saying, well, if you're here illegally, but you aren't committing any other crimes, we just sort of forget that.
Right.
And I get, you're admitting that it's illegal, but I think your emphasis is they would need to commit another crime for them to actually have to go.
Right. Yeah,
and that's where you and I would differ.
Right, would differ 100%. I'm not disagreeing with that.
And I will say, whenever you first brought that up, I didn't really understand, but then I did some thinking about it, and I still don't agree.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But I do see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because, as you pointed out, that could be used to, for example, revamp the Patriot Act.
Right.
And that could be a potential concern, but I would argue that because this is happening, Rand Paul was talking to Chris Christie about this in 2016. Now, you can prosecute, but still do it constitutionally.
100%, no question.
And so I think that if that were to happen, you and I would have way less disagreement. I think as long as it was done constitutionally, there wouldn't really be an issue there.
But just with past issues that we've had.
Sure, where people said it was constitutional when it wasn't, I think is what you would contend.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's kind of the concern of where I stand at, is why, again, I'm not saying that it's not.
Also, if you notice that Nathan's a lot brighter than I am,
yeah,
because there's an angel from heaven that's coming back. I'm just kidding. It's the rapture. No, it's just the sun. So,
but yeah, so I'm not saying that the initial crime is not illegal. It's not coming in here illegally.
Yeah, I understand 100%. That's not your claim.
Yeah, but yeah, I just think that also, again, as far as they come in here illegally, it's hard to. You still have to open up a database once they come in here illegally, and that again, opening up more database becomes an issue for me too.
Well, I think that to
then track them down, this, that, and the other.
Bit of a deeper question. So, whenever we admit an immigrant legally, are you for us having a record of their entry or not? Because I think that if you had a record of the legal ones, you would then be able to relatively easily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for that.
Right.
I would be for that. Yeah, I'd be okay with that one.
Okay.
But as far as again,
couldn't you figure out based on someone that's here illegally? Wouldn't you be able to then look at that list of people that have been admitted legally?
Potentially.
And say, well, I don't see you.
Yeah,
something like that.
Potentially. But then the question, still, you're opening up a database later to I don't see you on this list. This is where this person lived. Again, I'm not. Again, the door-to-door thing is the concern, and more databases. I'm just not a fan of it.
And I get that, but I think that by having a list of people that are admitted legally, it could be useful to weed out those who are illegal. And is there a downside to that in the future? Yeah, but I would contend it's not as bad as the alternative, is what I would
for
say.
Sure, and I could understand that. But again, I guess my fears just way over the other stuff. And also, again, I feel that a no tolerance policy, it's going to be so hard to not commit a second crime. We'll say second crime in this case. So sure, we'll call it amnesty, I guess, in a sense. But one, I guess, to an extent, it makes things quote unquote safer in a way, because there's a no tolerance policy of if you even commit a speeding ticket, see you later. So it at least puts the ones that still stay under the radar, in such a fine line that they have to stay on, that it's almost impossible to not screw up.
Yeah, I think to summarize, probably before we move on to the next topic, unless you have more to add.
No.
I think this has been good. I would say sort of the perspective, to state it quickly for each one of us, would be that you view the possible infringement on liberty of, for example, like a federal force being created. That is top priority of don't let that happen.
Yes.
Whereas with me, I think it would be, but by letting these people that have come in illegally but not commit any other crimes, that would be a worse downside than the possibility of this. You're saying, well, the possibility of that is not as bad as the possibility of this government doing X, Y, and Z.
And
that's a little bit of a subjective, thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's good. I think the audience now is more educated for having heard